Morning, members of the jury. Everyone may be seated. My assistant has told me that you all are making good progress on the snacks that we've provided to you. It's been a long trial, so you are entitled. Is the defense ready to call its next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Charlie Adelson.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do, sir.
You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly.
Charlie, let's start with the most important question. Did you cause the death of Professor Dan Markel?
Absolutely no.
Did you hire anyone to kill him?
No.
Did you put any letters in any diaper bags of Katherine Magbanua to have Professor Markel killed?
No.
Now, before we get there, let's spend some time on your background. How old are you?
I'm 47 years old.
Where were you raised?
I was raised in Coral Springs, Florida.
When were you arrested in this case?
I was arrested April 21st, 2022.
By the way, how do you feel right now?
I'm really nervous.
Why are you nervous?
My whole life depends on it.
Where have you been living since you were arrested a year and a half ago?
Leon County Jail.
Growing up, what was your family like?
It was pretty normal. I was in the middle of 3 children. My dad was a dentist. My mom was a school teacher. Played a lot of sports. Pretty normal upbringing.
Do you have a brother and a sister?
I have an older brother and a younger sister.
How close were you with your siblings growing up?
My brother I wasn't real close with. My sister I wasn't really that close with either, probably until I got into high school. And we were probably closer in age and had more in common. And then I got closer to her as the years went on.
Your family growing up, how would you describe it financially?
I'd say it was upper middle class. And then in 92, my dad lost a lot of money. And then wasn't upper middle class after that. And then my dad worked hard, and he worked until he was 78. He retired.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to public school in Coral Springs. I attended Taravella High School.
Was school easy for you?
Not really. I mean, I had to work really hard to get good grades, and I really didn't get good grades until I went to college.
Where did you go to college?
I went to UCF in Orlando.
And after graduating from college, what did you do next?
I went to dental school.
Where did you go to dental school?
I went to dental school at Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale.
After dental school, what did you do?
I did a residency in periodontics, and I did that at Nova Southeastern also.
Briefly, what is periodontics?
Periodontics is the surgery of the gums and bone, and it's 3 more years after dental school.
During your residency, did you work?
I did. I'd moonlight and I'd work nights and weekends as a general dentist.
When your residency ended, what was your financial situation?
I had about $200,000 in student loans.
Now, after graduating from your residency, what did you decide you were going to do?
I started basically moonlighting when I was in dental school, and then when I got out, I really didn't have money to start a business. So I started working for just individual dentists, where I'd come in and do the surgery for them in-house, so they wouldn't have to send the work out, but the patients could still be seen by a specialist. So I'd travel from office to office.
When you started, and I think, when did you graduate your residency?
Graduated my residency in 2006.
When you started, how many offices did you travel to?
When I first started, it was just the first office that I was moonlighting in when I was in my residency. And then through an assistant that had worked there, she introduced me to a couple offices, and then those offices introduced me to more people, and it grew from there. By the end of the first year, I was probably working in, I would say, 6 or 8 offices.
By the time frame of 2014, when Professor Markel was murdered, how many offices were you working in, approximately?
Between 30 and 35 offices I would come in to.
When you graduated, where did you live?
When I graduated Perio, I lived in an apartment across the street from school, and then I bought my house. I still lived in 16 years or 20 years later after that.
And that house is where?
On Whale Harbor. I moved in there in 2006.
Now, during this time frame of 2014, can you describe for the jury how far you would travel? In other words, how far were the offices apart from one another?
I never turned any work down, so I had an office as far south as Cutler Ridge, which is a little bit north of Homestead. It's a good hour and a half south of Fort Lauderdale. And then my furthest office I went to north was in East Port St. Lucie, which is a good hour and 45 minutes north of Fort Lauderdale.
Port St. Lucie is probably about halfway between Miami and Orlando. Is that fair to say, or closer to Orlando?
I'd say it's probably closer to Orlando.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, your typical work week, what did it look like?
I would work in usually 2 offices a day. I would start around 8 or 9 o'clock, work in one office till about 1 o'clock, and then I'd go to another office and I'd piggyback it. I'd try to be in another office that was in the same vicinity as the first office, and I'd just usually start there around 1:30. I'd have it where it's only a 5 or 10 minute drive to the second office. I would tell them I could stay as late as you need, and then when people had emergencies, which when you work in 30 offices, there's always someone that has an issue, I would come into their office. I would just say, just have an assistant stay, and when I got done with that second office, if it was 8 o'clock, 8:30, I would still go in and I'd work in the third office. So it was almost 2 offices on most days, and I would say 20% and 30% of the time there was a third office.
How many days a week did you work? And again, we're talking about the 2014 time frame.
I was working 6 days a week, and then I was still working 6 days a week.
Now,
and sometimes every once in a while there'd be a big case, and my whole week was booked up, and the patient needed something, and it was hours, and I didn't have time, so an office would open up on Sunday, and I would go in on Sunday and do the work.
For the most part, in your job working in these offices, what form of payment were you paid mostly in? Was it cash or some other form of payment?
The offices would always pay me an office check.
Now, were you ever paid in cash from these offices?
I wasn't paid from the offices that I worked for in cash, but if I was doing a work on like one of the assistants in the office or a friend of the dentist, and the dentist didn't want any money to come to him, and I was doing it as a favor, I would say just go ahead and pay me in cash for the materials. And then the materials were expensive. Sometimes they were $100, sometimes it was $1,000. And then but the dentist didn't want to take any of the money from that person, so he was like, I'm removing myself from the situation. So the person would pay me the cash for the materials for the work that I did on them, and that was really just when I was doing favors, and it was sporadic. Sometimes more than other, depends on the month.
By the way, backtracking a little bit, growing up, What profession was your dad in?
My dad was a general dentist.
And did your mom work growing up when you grew up?
She had 3 kids, and she still worked as a substitute teacher, where she would come in sporadically, but she wasn't working full time after she had the 3 of us.
Did there come a time where she worked in your dad's dental practice?
Yeah, I would say probably after the kids went to college, or maybe probably towards the end of high school or college. My mom came in and was doing front desk work and helping my dad out.
And what other roles did she have in the office?
She did the bookkeeping. She helped me with all my financial stuff as far as like paying insurances, making stuff with anything that was due at a certain time, licenses. She paid salaries at the office, and then also did front desk with Erica.
All right. Let's talk about the Adelson Institute. When you became this traveling periodontist, were one of the places that you traveled to your dad's dental practice?
Yes.
How often did you work at the Adelson Institute?
I would work at my dad's office. I would say every 4 to 6 weeks, and I would piggyback it. There was another office that I worked at every 2 weeks that was in the same plaza as my dad's. So I would finish there usually about 4 o'clock, and then I'd go into my office, and then I'd start working there at 4:15, and I'd stay as late as I needed to. 10, 11 o'clock.
Do you remember what the full name of the practice was called?
Well, originally, or when we changed it to...
Well, let's start with what you changed it to.
Okay. Well, when I graduated my residency in periodontics, I thought, since I was joining my dad's practice and it was now going to have a periodontist there, I thought we'd rename the practice and give it a fancy name. So we called it we copyrighted the Adelson Institute for Implants and Aesthetic Dentistry.
Okay. Now, growing up, did it have that name?
No.
It was just a plain old dental practice, right?
Yeah, it was just my dad and his 3 employees.
How many people worked at the Adelson Institute?
There was Erica Johnson, Clarissa. Erica was the front desk. Clarissa was my dad's assistant since 1979 until he retired 2 years ago. And then Amy was the hygienist. And then my mom when she would be there.
And your mom controlled the checkbook?
Yeah, she handled that stuff.
Who did all the billing for the practice?
My mom and Erica did the billing.
How many dentists were in the practice?
Just one dentist, just my dad.
Did there come a time when you bought the practice from your dad?
Yeah, my dad was going to sell the practice, and I thought it would be a good idea for me to buy it, and I thought maybe I'd run it and it would be something that I would always have. I didn't like the idea of it being sold, so I bought it from my dad when he wanted to slow down in 2012.
During the time period of 2014, who owned the practice?
In 2014, I was the owner of the practice.
Okay. Now, during the time frame of the wires in 2016, who owned the practice?
I had sold it back to my dad in 2015.
Why did you sell it back to your dad?
Because I didn't have any time to run it. And even though I bought it, nothing had changed. My dad was still the same dentist that was there. My mom was still the same person doing the books. And they were spending all their time running it. And I was so busy with my traveling periodontics, I didn't have time to dedicate to it. And it really wasn't financially, it wasn't feasible. And there wasn't a benefit.
I want to talk about cash a little bit. Do you like to collect cash?
I always have, yes.
Why?
I like it probably goes back to when I was a kid. I mean, I get $1 a week allowance, and I would save it up, and I just liked the feeling of looking at it. I'd rather look at it than put it in the bank. So whenever I had cash, I always saved it up.
Now, were there several ways that you accumulated cash?
Yes, there was.
Did you have a real estate business, or some real estate in 2014?
In 14, yes.
Okay. And would you accumulate cash through this business?
There was some cash that came in through that, yes.
Did you rent out dock space behind your house?
Yeah, I rented out my dock space behind my house since 2006, and it's been rented ever since.
And how would you be paid for that dock space?
The guy would come down once a year, and he would pay me in cash for the year.
Were there other ways that you would accumulate cash over the years?
From whenever I did work on someone as a favor, and they were just paying me for the materials, I got paid in cash on that. And probably the biggest source of cash through the years is every time I went out, every chance I could, I used my credit card to build up the airline miles, and I'd always pay the tab, and whoever was there would just give me the cash, and it added up over the years. I've done that 20 years.
And once you had this cash, what would you do with it?
Whenever I had $1,000, I would staple it, and it was a packet. So it was really, I stapled it because it was just being saved. I wasn't spending it. And I was always using my credit card, so the cash built up.
Where would you put the cash?
I put it in my safe.
When you, I'm going to go back to your business a little bit. When you started your business, did you make a lot of money the first couple years?
No. I mean, it took off pretty quick, but it wasn't where it was in 13, 14, or 15.
By 2011, approximately, how much money were you making?
I was probably making $350 a year.
And what did your income look like in the 2014 range?
14, I made between, I think, around $850 to $900,000.
What were your best years financially?
13, 14, and 15.
Have you ever been married?
No.
In the time frame of 2013-14, did you have any kids?
Back then, I didn't have my son.
During this 2013-2014 time frame, how would you succinctly describe your lifestyle?
Work came first. I, worked my whole life to get to where I was. So I wasn't turning any work down, and I was single, so I worked. I'd go to the gym late at night, and I'd probably go out one night a week, usually on a Saturday night is when I'd go out.
Now, do you have any children now?
I've got one son.
How old?
5.
I want to talk to you about your relationship with your parents as an adult. Fair to say you're close with your mom and dad?
Yes.
As an adult, how often would you talk with your mom and dad?
I would talk to my mom more often, a lot more often, just because my dad was always working. But I talk to my mom every day.
Once a day or multiple times?
At least once a day, but most likely probably twice a day, because there was always, usually one thing was a personal thing and one thing was something having to do with the office or scheduling or something like that.
During the 2014 time frame when you owned the office, did your mom work for you?
You could say that. Yeah.
Did she control the books?
She wrote the checks. Yeah, they had the checkbook at the house.
Now, was there any particular time that you would talk to your mom more often than other times?
Yeah, in the morning driving into work, I'd call my mom, and usually on the way home from work, I'd I'd call them. Just depends on how long the drive was, really.
How involved was your mom in your life?
Business-wise, very involved because she was running the office. Personal-wise, I would tell them things and keep them up to date with stuff and my life. But it was my life. I did whatever I wanted to do.
We're going to get to this later, but how involved was your mom in your sister's life?
I think she was more involved. And I think my sister involved my mom maybe more. And it just depends on different issues.
I want to talk a little bit about your sister, Wendy. As adults, before she married Professor Markel, how often would you talk with her?
I'd call my sister, I'd say about every 10 days or so we'd talk. I'd call her, but she was busy and she wasn't real good with the phone. So I would call her and she would always take a day or two to call me back. I spoke to her half the time when I called. Half the time she didn't pick up. How
often would you see her, again, pre-marriage? How often would you see your sister?
Not a lot. In 1995, I left to go to college. In 97, she left to go to college up in Boston. So it was pretty much, I would say, holidays, like every 3-4 months. Thanksgiving, Christmas time, sometimes during the summer. So maybe 3-4 times a year I'd see her.
There came a time when Wendy started dating Professor Markel, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember when you first met him?
I do. I think he was in town, and I remember all of us going out to lunch. I think we went to a deli.
What did you think of him?
I thought he was a nice guy. He kind of seemed like all my other sister's boyfriends she's had in the past. I've never really had much in common with them. And she kind of seemed like the rest of them. But that was pretty much it.
Now, after they got married, what was your relationship like with Professor Markel?
It was the same as before they got married. We texted each other on our birthdays. I don't think we ever really called each other or hung out. I would just see him when he came over to the house with my sister.
And how often would you see him and your sister?
I would say twice a year, maybe, or roughly around there, maybe 3 times a year.
In the years that Professor Markel and your sister were married and living in Tallahassee, how often did you come to Tallahassee?
I'd only been to Tallahassee. I was there twice, I believe, when her children were born. And then once when I was working in Alabama. I had a research fellowship, and I was passing through Tallahassee. I spent the night with them, and I saw them that time too.
When Professor Markel and your sister were married, did you still communicate with your sister about the same amount of time?
It may have been a little less, because I remember when she had kids, she had even less time. So I probably spoke to her. I'd call her, and then probably more times than not, she didn't pick up the phone. And then I'd get a call back a couple days later. So it was pretty similar.
Did there come a time when you became aware that Wendy and Professor Markel were having marital issues?
Yes.
What did you learn?
I took my sister out to dinner when she had come to town, and we went to the Melting Pot, and I remember her telling me that they were having issues and it was pretty serious.
Did she tell you that they were going through marriage counseling?
Yeah. That's when I found out, and because that's what I was going to say, is like, if you tried to work things out. And that's when I found out that they had been in counseling for 6 months. I didn't know about it before.
Now, what were some of the issues, if you remember, that she told you they were having?
He was becoming very, very religious. There was becoming issues with diet and how she was cooking in the house. She wasn't really respectful he wasn't really respectful of her career. He would belittle her. he obviously seemed like he lost his eye for her, and she seemed like she'd lost his eye for him, and she wasn't happy.
Now, did she complain about violence or danger or anything like that?
Never.
Did she complain that he was not a good father?
No, he was very attentive to his sons.
Did you learn at some point that your sister was going to file for divorce?
I did.
And when you heard that she was going to file for divorce, how did you feel?
I felt bad for her. I mean, she was sad. I mean, no one goes to get married to get divorced. But she seemed like she spent 6 months in therapy with him, and it didn't change anything how she felt, and he didn't change how he was. And I said, listen, the kids need to grow up in a happy household. Like, they can't have fighting. They can't have a miserable mom who's unhappy. You need to have the kids are better off growing up in two separate households where there's a positive environment instead of negative.
Did your sister seem angry to you?
No, she seemed sad.
How involved were you with the divorce proceedings?
I wasn't really involved with the divorce proceedings on the day-to-day stuff. I would definitely hear stories, most of which would come from my mom when I'd be driving to work in the morning or driving home. I would hear the latest update of what's going on. But I would say probably 20% came from Wendy and 80% came from my mom.
How did Wendy seem to you during the period when they were going through the divorce proceedings?
Extremely stressed. Very stressed out.
How did your mom seem?
She was upset because my sister was stressed, and it was almost like a telephone game. Like my sister would vent to my mom, then my mom would be venting to me.
In general, was your perception that the litigation was very litigious?
Yeah, I did learn that. I mean, he was fighting over bicycles and all kinds of nonsense, and it seemed not to end.
Now, were there some big issues like relocation that were issues as well?
Yes.
Let's talk about relocation. Did there come a time that you learned that your sister filed a motion to try to relocate to South Florida?
I did.
And do you know why she wanted to relocate to South Florida?
Primarily, it was because she had no family in Tallahassee, and she had 2 young kids, and my parents lived in South Florida. I lived in Fort Lauderdale, and she wanted to be closer to family, and she had a better, more secure job for her career in South Florida.
How did you feel about the idea of your sister and the boys moving to South Florida?
I thought it would be great. I mean, I hadn't lived in the same town as her since 1995, so I thought it would be great to have her in town.
How important was it to you?
I mean, it wasn't real important to the point where, like, I thought about it all the time, but I mean, if I thought about it, I'd be happy to have her back home.
How important was it to your mom and your dad?
To them it was very important. They wanted her to come back because she had no family in Tallahassee.
And what was your understanding of what Professor Markel thought about this relocation effort?
I knew he was against it, and he wanted her to stay in Tallahassee with him.
Did you learn at some point that the petition was denied for relocation?
Yeah.
And when it was denied, how did your mom feel about it?
My mom they were very disappointed. They were unhappy.
How about your sister?
She wasn't that disappointed, I guess, because she's a lawyer and she knows, what's the probability of something like this happening. And she said it was a long shot. She said she wasn't really expecting it, but it was worth it just to take a shot to see if it would happen.
Were you angry?
No. I mean, it didn't change anything in my life.
Now, we've seen some emails regarding converting the boys to Christianity. We've seen some pretty out there emails from your mom. Do you recall seeing those emails in this trial?
I do, yeah.
And do you recall whether you saw those emails when they were written, back when they were written?
Yeah, I would get forwarded to me all kinds of stuff, for sure.
Did you come up with any of those ideas?
No.
Now, on some of those emails, we'll see that you respond, "I like it." Why did you respond that way?
Well, my sister tried being really nice to Danny. It got her nowhere, and he was being really litigious, and he was looking to give her a hard time. And I thought that it was a way that she would go ahead and give him a hard time back and kind of push his buttons the way he was trying to push her buttons. So basically, if he's being a jerk to you, just be a jerk back and see if maybe he'll stop. So I didn't think any of those things she was actually ever going to follow through with, but I thought that it would really push his buttons, so I thought, why not give it a shot?
Now, I want to talk about the $1 million offer. Did you ever become aware of efforts by your family, including yourself,
Yes.
to offer Professor Markel money to allow your sister to relocate?
I did, yes.
And do you recall who came up with that idea?
It was my parents.
What were the terms of the offer? How much was it for?
The offer was for $1 million to have him move down south to South Florida with my sister and the boys, and that would afford him enough money that he could easily commute to his job in Tallahassee for the days that he worked, just the way senators in South Florida commute to Tallahassee all the time. And that was the idea behind it.
Now, how were you involved in this idea?
Not super involved, but I definitely said to my parents, I said, I will help, and I will pay a third of that $1 million. And when Wendy one day starts making real money, and she's able to, I want to be paid back.
At this point in time, were you making more money than your parents?
I was, yes.
Did you or your family ever speak with an attorney about the legality of this offer?
I didn't, but I know they wanted to run it by an attorney. I think they used Gary Cohn to run it by.
Do you know if the offer was ever made?
As I sit here today, I know that the offer was never made. But back when the offer I thought it was made and thought it was turned down.
Did you, Charlie, you like to talk a lot, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize how much I talk until I listened to all those tapes, and evidently I do. I mean, I knew I liked to talk, but didn't realize how much.
When you got involved in this $1 million offer, would you talk about it with others?
Yes.
How would it come up?
It would come up when people would say, doesn't your sister want to move back home? How's she doing? And I said, yeah, no, she definitely wants to move back home. We tried everything we could. Like, we even offered $1 million to Dan to see if he would move down with her, and it didn't work. Like, he turned it down.
Now, did you ever talk with Katherine Magbanua? And we'll talk a lot about her in a little bit. But did you ever talk with Katherine Magbanua about that $1 million offer?
Yes, I did.
And what do you remember telling her?
The same thing I told everybody else. Is it came up when she was asking me about, doesn't your sister want to move back home? And I said, yeah. I said, we tried everything we could. We even offered Danny $1 million to moved back to South Florida, and it didn't work. It's the same thing I said to her as what I said to a bunch of people.
How did she respond?
She was like, "Wow, that's a lot of money." She's like, "You got to take out a loan for that?" And I said, "No, I got cash. I can pay for it."
Okay. Now let's talk about gifts to your sister during her divorce. In general, did you provide any financial assistance to Wendy during the divorce?
No, she never asked, and I never gave her any money.
Did you pay for her lawyers?
Never.
Now, did you give her any gifts? And let's just start with the broad question, and then we'll break it down. Did
Yes.
you give her any gifts?
Yes, I've given her gifts during the divorce.
Okay. Do you recall giving her a TV?
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, when she was moving out of the marital home, and she was starting, from scratch in a new house, she didn't take any of the, only took her belongings. I said to my mom, I said, "What does Wendy need? Like, what does she need for the new place?" And she said, "Actually, she's leaving the TV sets. She needs a TV set for the house." So I said, "All right, fine." I said, go to the store up there and go to Best Buy and pick out a really nice TV set, and I'll pay for it. I said, "Buy it and I'll give you the money."
Now, do you recall making a joke that buying her a TV was cheaper than hiring a hitman? Something to that effect.
Yeah, it was. Want me to say what?
Yeah, tell me what the joke was.
What happened was, when I gave her the TV set as a divorce present, it was the stupidest thing I ever said in my life. And I said, I was going to get you a Hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead. And I said it as a complete joke, and it was stupid, but I do that a lot.
Did you make that joke to others?
Yes.
Did you make that joke many times throughout 2013 and 2014?
I made that joke when she was having problems and she was fighting and she was upset. I recycled the joke, and it was stupid.
Did you ever say that joke to Katherine Magbanua?
Yes, I did.
Just to be clear, did you ever look into hiring a hitman?
No, never.
Are you aware that the divorce proceedings settled in July of 2013?
Yeah, I believe it ended in summer of 13.
Now, how did your sister react to the settlement?
I think she found it as like a sense of relief. It seemed like she had closure. She knew what she was going to be doing and where she was going to be living, and I think she was just looking. I think she was happy. Happy in the sense that she was able to put it behind her.
What was the custody arrangement? Do you know what the custody arrangement was?
I know it was 50-50.
After the settlement, how were things with Professor Markel and your sister?
I think they were calm for a little bit, and then it got litigious. There'd be little brief areas of calm, and then I think he was kept trying to bring her back into court, and it started becoming litigious again.
What was your understanding of this mostly based on?
Things that I'd hear from my mom, probably 20% from my sister, 80% from my mom.
Was your mom upset?
She would get upset when my sister would tell her about Danny pushing her buttons and filing all these things in court and giving her a hard time.
What about you? During the period of all this litigation, what were your feelings about Professor Markel?
I thought he was being a jerk. I mean, hearing stories that he's showing up at her work and bad-mouthing her to other colleagues and saying horrible things about her, I thought he was just being a jerk to her.
Now, Would you think about this all day long, in the morning and at night? I mean, how important was this to your life?
It wasn't. I mean, I would only think about it when I'd be listening to a story, and it would be, I'd be driving in the car talking to my mom. She would relay the latest that my sister told her, and then she'd be telling me, and that's when I would think about it. But I mean, I never for a second was at work thinking about it or doing activities that I enjoyed thinking about it. When I wake up in the morning, I never thought about it.
Were you panicked at all about it? Were you concerned that your sister was going to be disbarred? Anything like that? Was that a big issue for you?
No, I mean that was a nonsense threat.
When you would learn about things, though, would you talk about what was going on to others?
Yeah, I did talk a lot.
Why would you, considering your sister's divorce wasn't, and her issues with Professor Markel weren't a huge part of your life, as you've testified, why would you be talking about it to others?
One, I talked a lot.
How would it come up?
And it would come up when I'd be sitting at the dinner table and I'd hear this crazy story that my mom told me from earlier that day, and I guess it's more interesting than talking about teeth. So I would sit there and I'd share things with my girlfriend or friends, and I'd relay stories.
By the way, during this time period, and now I'm talking about late 13, second half of 13 and 14, were you still speaking with your sister about the same amount or more?
I would say it's probably about the same. About every 10 days or so we talk.
Did you travel to Tallahassee to check on her after she filed for divorce? How many times did you come to Tallahassee during this time period?
Never. I think the last time I came to Tallahassee was 2011 or 2010.
Now, what was your understanding of how Wendy felt about the idea of staying in Tallahassee as time went on?
I think she understood that's what her life was going to be. I mean, she loved her job up here. She was getting excited about things. She was dating people. She was embarking on her new life in Tallahassee.
What was her? Did there come a time when she won an award, and what do you remember about that?
I remember I was real proud of her. She wrote a book, and the book was selected by Florida State to be the mandatory reading for all incoming freshmen. And she was chosen to be the speaker to the incoming class, and that was to take place in August. And I know she was super excited about it, and we're all planning to come up there and be there for her.
Okay, I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about Katherine Magbanua. May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Take your time.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Katherine Magbanua. How did you first meet Katherine Magbanua?
I met Katie in the summer of 2013. She started working the front desk of a dental office that I worked at.
And what was that dental office? Where was it?
The name of the office was Sophie Dental, and it was in South Beach.
What did she do for the dental office?
She was the front desk and office manager for the office.
How often would you work in that office?
I was there, say, every 3 weeks. I was there for half a day every 3 weeks.
Was that office a big generator of income for you?
It was one of my better offices, yeah.
Now, you said you met her in July 2013. When did you first go out with her?
We first went out, it would have been first week of October, around October 10th.
And who initially pursued who?
I pursued her.
Why did you ask her out?
Katie was really cute. She was friendly. She went to the same. She actually graduated from UCF, also different time, but she graduated from there. She was a really smart girl. I mean, she was extremely smart and witty, and that's why I pursued her.
Once you went out with her, did you learn that she had 2 kids?
I did.
Now, initially, did you learn anything about her ex-husband?
No, the only thing I knew is that she'd been with somebody for about 10 years, and that she was now single.
After you dated her a couple times, what did you like about her?
Well, and aside from the initial things, what attracted me to her was she had a very busy life also, and my life was so busy it was hard for me to be in a relationship where someone wanted to go have dinner at 5 o'clock and hang out with me a couple days a week. So she was working full time, had 2 kids, so she was fine seeing me once or twice a week, and we both had very little time.
Now, you said that your first date was sometime in early October 2013.
Yeah, it wasn't even a real date. We just went and had dinner. There's a restaurant in the building, and we finished late, and I said, "You want to grab dinner?" And we ate at the building.
Did you ask her just 2 weeks later if she could find someone to kill Professor Markel?
No, not at all.
Did you have a Halloween party with her or go trick-or-treating with her, and after the party say, hey, do you know anyone who can take care of my ex-brother-in-law for me?
No, absolutely not.
Now, back to the relationship. Over time, did it become more serious?
Over time, in the beginning, it's always like you're just trying to see who each other is, and then as time went on, she wanted to get more serious. I'd say probably by the springtime, by probably around March, she started asking me.
Now, did you consider her to be your girlfriend, though?
She was my girlfriend, yeah.
Did you consider yourself to be exclusive?
After the first 3 months together, yeah, for sure.
Did you ever see a possibility of marriage with her?
No, I didn't.
During the time that you dated her, how often, and let's be clear, we're talking about now the beginning of 2014.
Right.
So let's keep it far away from July. During the time that you dated her, how often would you communicate with her?
We talked every day.
When would you talk to her?
I'd call her when I was in the car driving to work. We'd text throughout the day, and then I'd always talk to her at night time.
Where was she living at the time?
She was living in North Miami.
And again, you were living in the same place in Fort Lauderdale?
Same house in Fort Lauderdale, yeah.
How often would you see her?
I would see her once a week. Sometimes every once in a while it would be twice, but I would say more often once than twice.
And when you saw her, what would you typically do?
We'd go to dinner, hang out, watch a movie, hang out at my house.
Did you have any relationship with her children?
No, I met her children on one occasion. Maybe twice, but definitely no more than twice.
Did she go to family events with you?
She did meet my family a couple times, yeah.
She met your sister how many times, if you recall?
2 times.
And How many times do you think she might have met your parents?
I would say probably maybe around 8 times, 8 or 9 times.
Was she a patient of your dad's?
Yes, she was.
We're going to get into this in more detail later, but let's be clear right now. Did Katherine Magbanua ever work for your dad or for you at the Adelson Institute?
No, never.
Now, I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but as time went on in 2014, did she want to be more serious?
Yeah.
And what did you think about that?
I liked it the way it was. I mean, it was good in the beginning. My life, I wasn't looking to change it. I was still in that workaholic mode. But she started asking me, what are we? What are we doing?
At the time that you met her, and I want to talk a little bit about your knowledge of Sigfredo Garcia now. At the time that you met her, to your knowledge, she was single, right?
Yes.
And I think you testified that initially you didn't learn anything about her ex.
Nothing other than she was completely single. She was done with him.
I want to show you defense exhibit. It's not in evidence. I need a sticker. No, May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what's marked for identification purposes as Defense Exhibit 34. Please take a look at it. Are these text messages between you and Katherine Magbanua on November 27th at 2:13?
Yes, they are.
Judge, I'd move in Defense Exhibit 34 at this time.
Response?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Please
of mind.
approach. As the hearsay is overruled, you may continue with your examination.
These text messages, are they a true and correct reflection of your messages on November 27th, 2013?
Yes, they are.
Judge, I'd move in Exhibit 34 at this time.
Any further objection?
No, Your Honor.
They are admitted at this time.
May I publish?
You may.
Now, you see the timing is in military time, so it says November 27th at 13:42. We can agree that's 1:42.
Yes.
Katie says, my ex knows about you. I'm pretty sure I know how he knew because he even knows your name. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And you say, do I know him from my past? You see that?
Yes, I do.
What are you asking Katie here?
I have no idea who her ex is. And she's saying he knows me, so I'm saying, do I know him?
And that's in late November 2013, right?
Yes.
That's after 1 month almost after Halloween, correct?
Yes.
Now, as time went on, did you learn more about her ex?
In the springtime, I did.
In February, was there an incident with Katie and her ex that you recall?
Yeah. I remember her coming over my house, and she was pretty upset. She had a mark on her neck. They'd gotten into an altercation, and he ripped a necklace that he'd given her off her neck. And she was crying, and she was all upset.
How did you react?
She could tell I was upset. I mean, someone just roughed her up, and she could tell I was upset. And she said, "Don't do anything." She goes, "He will kill you. He will kick your ass. You don't stand a chance."
Now, why did you continue to date her after this?
I didn't take that as a threat to me. I just took it as she's got a crazy ex-boyfriend that wants her back, and she's got 2 kids with him, and it wasn't a threat. I didn't feel like he was threatening me. She just was like, it's a part of her life that I wasn't going to hold against her.
I want to show you a couple other texts related to your relationship with Ms. Magbanua in January, February, and March of 14. And these will be Defendant's Exhibits 35, 36, and 37. And I'll give a copy to the governor. The January text is 35. The February text is 36. And the March 24th text, do you have that one?
Yes.
Is 37.
I have March 15th.
That's a different one. There you go. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
That's 35. Just put it aside. That's 36. And that's 37. Can you take a look at these items? Do you recognize these text messages?
Yes, I do.
Were they kept, are they accurate reflections of your text messages?
They are, yes.
I would move these exhibits into evidence now, Your Honor.
Any objection?
Hearsay, Your Honor. I'm still reviewing them then.
You can show me a copy of the exhibits.
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach?
Reviewing the exhibits.
I have, Your Honor. My objection is hearsay.
Attorneys can briefly approach. Ruled as to hearsay, you may continue with your examination.
So let's talk about Defense Exhibit 35.
Sure.
A text from January 19, 2014. And in this exchange, what is Miss Magbanua asking you about?
She asked me if I wanted things to be different, and she was saying how much she missed me.
And did you want things to be different at this point in time?
No, I wanted things to stay the way they were from when we just started dating.
Now, if you turn to Defense Exhibit 36, text messages from February 5th, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
What is she asking you? What does she start by asking you about? And you don't have to read it. Just tell the jury generally what she's asking you about. What is she concerned about?
She's asking if I'm talking to a bunch of other girls.
And what do you tell her in response generally?
I say, no, I'm not.
And again, in this text message, she's asking you whether she's telling you that she wants more, right?
Yeah.
And how do you respond?
I ask her, are you thinking about getting back with your ex?
And then what do you say after that?
Yeah. I say you're the coolest and most fun girl, that I'm always happy when I'm around. And then I said, I know it's not easy, and I think we're doing a good job at not rushing things. So
And what were you trying to tell Miss Magbanua in this text message?
I was trying to say I like you and I have a good time hanging out with you, but I don't want to rush things.
Now, moving to text messages in March of 2014. Ms. Magbanua texts you, you've mentioned me to your mom, and you say yes, and she says, I love you. Aw, baby. Why was this a big deal to her?
I guess when I'd spoken to her, I brought up that I'd mentioned her to my mom, and she thought I was making things more serious. So I think she got excited over that.
Okay, you can put those aside.
Judge, I'm going to object regarding Defense Exhibit 37 and ask for best evidence that it be published to the jury.
I'll sustain on best evidence grounds. Please publish Defense 37. Members of the jury get to reach your own conclusions as to the context of the statements.
Okay, let's publish it to the jury and see if it says what I said. March 24th at 12:17. You see she texts you and says, you've mentioned me to your mom?
Yes.
Do you see that you respond, yes?
Yes, I do.
Do you see that she responds, that made me so happy?
Yeah, she took it the wrong way.
Any other clarification, Your Honor? Is it fair to say that she was excited that you had mentioned her to your mom?
Yeah, she was happy. I mean, she got overly excited. I wasn't expecting that.
Now, in the early summer of 2014, what were you telling your friends about your relationship with Katherine Magbanua?
Objection, relevance?
Sustain. Please lay a foundation if you can.
Was your relationship coming to an end in the summer of 2014?
Yes, she wanted more, and I didn't want anything more.
And were you communicating that to friends?
Yes, I was.
I want to talk to you about a dinner on March 11th, 2014, a Yardbird dinner. One moment, Your Honor.
Take your time.
Do you recall going to that dinner?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember who was the dinner with?
I met Katie down in Miami on Lincoln Road, and my sister was in town, and I was already working down there. I remember I was in my scrubs, and my sister came and she brought the guy that she just started dating, who's Jeff Lacoste.
Do you recall where you sat?
Yeah, we sat outside the restaurant. There was a few tables set up on the sidewalk, and it was the four of us sitting there.
Did you know that you were being watched?
No, not at all.
Did you know that Sigfredo Garcia was thinking about killing you that night?
No, not at all.
Now, this is March 11th, 2014, right?
Yes.
During the dinner, do you recall discussions about ex-husbands between your sister and Katherine Magbanua?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall who initiated those discussions?
No, I don't.
Do you recall making a bad joke again at that dinner?
Yes.
And that's the same joke that we've already discussed.
Yeah, I did.
Now, after the dinner, who came back to your house?
My sister and Jeff Lacoste came back to my house.
What about Katherine Magbanua?
No, she went home just to be with her kids.
And was it a normal night when your sister and Jeff Lacoste came back?
Yeah, but it's the first time I've ever had, I think, my sister and her boyfriend sleep over at my house. So, but it was normal.
Did you ever have any conversations other than some text messages that Jeff Lacoste sent you with him after that night?
No, I never spoke to him again.
Did you know anything about a first attempted murder of Professor Markel in early June?
No.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about birthdays and your dad's birthday and a birthday present. And you may remember some text messages that the state showed during their case regarding wanting to talk to your... Give me one second. Do you recall the state showing text messages where you're texting with your mom and she tells you that she can't talk right now, that she'll call you when she's alone, she's driving back and she's at a stop in Gainesville, and to erase the text message?
Yeah.
Do you recall what that is all about?
It was about my dad's birthday.
Who was your mom with at that stop at Gainesville?
She was with my dad, so she didn't want to talk in front of him.
And why didn't she want to talk in front of him?
Because it was a surprise. Originally, we were thinking about doing a cruise.
What was a surprise? That you were going to kill Professor Markel? or that you were going to have a surprise birthday party for your dad?
No, it was going to be his 70th birthday party.
And do you recall in that text message talking about a caterer?
Yes.
Now, you had discussed this caterer as far back as April and May with your mom, correct?
Yes.
And those are reflected in text messages as well, correct?
Yes, they are.
On June 5th, do you recall your mom texting you and asking you, don't forget to get information on the caterer?
Yes.
Now, what did you get your dad for his birthday gift?
I paid for the catering for the party.
And what type of catering was it?
It was a chef came to the party and they cooked paella and seafood, and then we had a bunch of desserts also and salads.
I'm showing you what's marked for identification purposes only as Defendant's Exhibit 43. I'm showing you what's marked as Defendant's Exhibit 43. And these are a composite of all of your text messages between June 2nd, 2014 and June 7th, 2014. May I approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
Can you look through this and see if this is an accurate reflection of all your text messages during that period?
Yes, they are.
Judge, I would move in Defense Exhibit 43 at this point in time.
I'm going to need to review the exhibit. State, do you have any objections?
Yes, Your Honor. Hearsay and relevance.
Please bring me a copy of the exhibit. Members of the jury, the bailiff is going to take you back to the jury room. We will resume with the testimony momentarily. Seated. If the attorneys can approach. 12 minutes until 10:30. Mr. Adelson, if you need to step down and go back to council table, you're permitted to do so.